that are going to be there, that are going to operate there, that are going to create tensions, because that's what binaries do. They create dynamic tensions. So we're not going to escape all of that. It's not like the future, is this cycle that's coming. This is not a cycle that is going to be anything other than full of turmoil. You'll see that when we get to the Aquarian age, we get to peace. Now, that's going to be relative as well, but the thematic is going to be very different. Very different. But here, when we're looking at this coming cycle and the 400 odd years that cycle is going to occupy, I want you to see that the end of belief is not something that just dissolves and disappears nicely. It doesn't. It doesn't. And with the exception of Raves that will come into the world, the rest of the population is made up of killer monkeys. And when killer monkeys are at a point of tension in the binary that cannot be resolved nicely, they resolve it physically. Or try to. And have been doing so forever. There isn't a fundamentalist environment anywhere in the world representing any faith in the world that will not go down to the last being, fighting, clawing, killing, all the way. You can't go to those people and say, look, it's very nice that you believe in this and that, but why don't you worry about yourself? Why don't we do a little bit of work on you? Why don't we find out whether you really believe this stuff or not? Why don't we find out who you are? That's a lot more important than serving some whatever. It's time to find out who you are. Now that is not like they're going to be sitting there saying, oh yes, I'm really open to that. I'd like nothing better. Please, tell me. I'm not interested in that. I mean, the level of resistance that's possible in the not-self, in the Piscean age with belief systems is incredible. We already know that. I mean, what kind of a human being gets on an airplane and flies it into a building? You really have to have a strong belief system to do that. I mean, you do. No love, but a strong belief system. And you look at acts like that, and you can't say that these are people that are mad. They're not mad. They're not mad. There are people doing these kind of things, have been doing these kind of things forever. You sit down in the middle of a square and you pour gasoline over yourself and you light a match. Human beings. The belief process is so thick. It's so thick. There's a wonderful meditation for all of you. Look inside yourself and see the things you still believe in. I mean, I live in Spain now. I do not believe that things happen on time. I mean, really. I have to recognize that. And it's not like you have to purge them. And it's not like, oh God, I still believe in something. It's okay. It's the Piscean age. But you see, you in your own process of coming to this knowledge and beginning this process of being your own authority, how clearly you can recognize how odd it is, those things that you really still believe in. And if you go into your authority will tell you right away, do I really believe in that? Why am I carrying that baggage with me? It's the age. It's the age. It's this thing about understanding how limited we are. There is no choice. The program is incredibly powerful. Deeply, 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 deeply powerful. Right from the beginning, when I started and I said to people that there was no choice, they would all get uptight, What do you mean? I'm in charge of my life. I came to see you, didn't I? There's an enormous change. Well, I'll look in detail at these changes when we come after the break. But I just want to look at the 30th gate for a moment. If you look at the 30th gate, and you go to the sixth line of the 30th gate, you'll see it's between 29 degrees, 11 minutes 15 seconds, and 7 minutes 30 seconds into Pisces. So in other words, as you're moving back through that beginning, that 30, the sixth line, you're still in the Piscean age when the equinox first enters into the 30, but it doesn't last very long. Now, of course, we're talking about scales of years here, so when I say it doesn't last very long, I haven't done the exact calculation, but I assume it's whatever it is, 10, 15 years, that it would take for it to actually enter into Aquarius itself. It's such a beautiful line, the sixth line of the 30, and understand something about the 30. The 30 is magical. You know, when you run up the abstract side from the root, the 41, the 30, the 36, the 35, we know this is the human experiential way. This is the way of desire. This is the way of feelings. This is the only stream of the emotional system that will not wake up. You know, this is the human experience. It's not rave. It's the human experiential way. And that the whole thing about the human experiential way is that it differs from its symmetry. It differs from logic only in one way. Logic says if I do this, this, and this, I'll get to that. And it's based on logical processes. And so they do this, this, and this, and they get to that. If they don't, they know the premise was wrong. And so they refine their experiment. You know, they challenge it, they correct it, they judge it, they use their talent, their skills, and then they can work out a program that says, if you take this and you put them together, you get that. Now the abstract wants to be exactly the same way. If I do this and that, the other thing will happen. And remember, everything about the abstract is that the abstract leads to expectation. If you look at the logical side, the 16th gate, this is identification. To identify with a pattern that works, that's the skill. And on the 35, you look on the other side, what you're dealing with is expectation. The expectation that doing this, that, and the other is going to be fulfilling. That it's going to be of value as an experience. And so all abstract people run around as if they're logical. If I do this, this, and that, their expectation, I'm going to get something. But then the 30th gate steps in. This is the gate of the fates. It's the gate of the fates. See, we're all going to meet our fate in that sense. You know, we're going to enter into the realm of the fates the moment that we enter into the Aquarian age. You know, because the Aquarian is the end for us. We're not going to go any further than that. You know, we're not going to get to a Capricornian age. We're never going to get there. And we're going to enter into that Aquarian experience. And it is the experience of the fates. And think about what the fates do. They get in the way. They say, you think if you do this, this, and that, you're going to get there. Watch. Watch what happens. Life is full of the unexpected. That the fates are there. And in the end, the fates are there to cut the cord and end the life. End the process. And so the 30th gate has a significance at many, many levels. It's also the clinging fire. This is the fire that the mystics have always spoken of. The fire that's waiting for us. The fire that comes before the night of Brahma. The fire that's going to be there at Judgment Day. The fire, the fire, the fire, the fire, the fire. It shall all end in fire. For that, I have no doubt. It will all end in fire. That's clear. And entering into the 30th gate is the kindling, if you will, of that fire. It's the start of the process that leads to the burning. Right? And there will be a burning ground. And I will, certainly after my break, tell you about its relationship to our concepts of heaven and hell. But there is a burning ground waiting for us. Okay, so you enter into the 30th gate, and you enter into the 6th line. And the 6th line is the discipline to maintain right action. Theme of an era. The assertiveness to purge the inferior while accepting to lead the weak. The strength to eliminate negative feelings. An inherent peacefulness that is all too often will abide the presence of inferior forces. Peacefulness, right action. Now, it isn't to say that everybody, again, these are large programming influences. But it's in this era that there will be the space. By the way, that line reads better for a rave than a human. That they'll be able to indulge peacefully the inferiors around them. That quite literally we enter into an era, because the thing to understand is that if everybody has their own authority, there is no collective conflict. There can't be. You can only have collective conflict if you've got a Saddam over there and a George over there that's speaking authoritatively for everything that they control. But the moment that everybody is living out their own unique authority, it's not possible to have collective conflict. It's possible to have personal conflict. It doesn't mean that killing will end. Killing ends when the killer monkey dies. Kill the killer monkey and you get rid of that kind of killing. But as long as humans are going to be in these forms, no matter how awake they are, if you're awake doesn't mean you can't kill. It doesn't. But if you get killed by an awake killer, you got what you deserved. And you got it correctly. This fantasy about good is going to triumph over evil, The good guys are going to triumph over the bad guys. And on and on and on and on and on. It's not true. That's not the point. See, look, if you truly have your own unique authority, you are the balance of all of it. And you are light and darkness. You are what it's all about. You are the balance of these things. And that balance, by the way, is always tilted. It's not like it's equal. I'm slightly darker than I'm light. None of it's equal. But the fact is that that's the point. And you can only find that balance as a human being, not on the outside. You find that balance on the inside. The passenger, the light, accepting the form, the vehicle, the matter. You can never escape. We've got genes inside of us that are carrying information that was part of our survival mechanism millions and millions of years ago. We have ancestral genes going back to the deepest kind of, voracious survival mechanisms. You're not going to get rid of all of that. That would stop us from being human. But you will eliminate what we call the real ugly violence and horror of collective killing, collective violence. That's why the Aquarian is an age of peace. Not because each and every unique being is peaceful, but because there will not be that level of collective violence. That's why when I was speaking yesterday about my concerns for raves, that I knew that this would be the era, the Aquarian cycle. That the moment they entered into the Aquarian cycle, they would enter into a place of protection. No longer would they be subject to the control of outside authority, and they would be in a conditioning environment in which collective violence, in other words, getting rid of all of them, or perhaps them getting rid of humans, whatever the case may be, that simply would not be possible. Because that's not the thematic that's going to be at work. So there's this very special, future out there. My concern is, how well are we going to get through the next 400 years or so Because you see, it's this dissolving of the Piscean. And in this dissolving of the Piscean, you're not going to escape profound communal violence. And we have that. And in numbers, it's extraordinary how many human beings, in numbers, not percentage. In percentage, we're actually doing better. In numbers, it's incredible how many human beings are killed as a part of collective acts of violence. And all of that based on authorities who are establishing through their morality who are the good ones and who are the bad ones. And we're going to go through a whole age of that. And remember, the fact that the not-self is going to be conditioned in the coming era to be very concerned about their own individual survival, but still be subject to the authority of outside forces, means that they will give a lot of power to outside forces to give them that survival protection. That's scary. Because that survival is going to be a very powerful theme, and you still do not have differentiated humans who are going to be able to establish within themselves whether something is correct or not. And not simply accept, what others dictate is correct. I'm not going to see it, but I can feel it inside of me. What that opening of that Aquarian experience is going to bring. This opportunity, in a sense, for as much right action to be possible before the end. For correctness to be something that is deeply, deeply established amongst at least a large slice of the human population. During the break, France asked me an excellent question about the nature of steps. Steps. Remember, I began by explaining that we were in the 54th step. I say that only because that's what I was told. I also know when the 55th step is because I was also told. During the course of a full round, we go through 62 actual steps. As a matter of fact, if I were to be really, really precise, we actually go through 61 specific steps. That is, that the first and the second steps are a binary that initiate together. In fact, they're one step. And the 63rd and the 64th steps don't exist at all. I mean, the 63 and the 64, any of you that possess that, doesn't belong to anything that's here. And anyone who has to deal with such people knows that to be true, but nonetheless. Okay, so in terms of the structure of a round where you have 61... Yes. If you look at the structure of a round and you see that a round can be broken up into 61 parts, I was not told and do not know when those various steps take place, because it's not a simple division of the 19,000 years by 61, and I was not given any key to that. What I do know, in the sense, is that I do know what's coming. And it's one of those things to recognize, is that between 2027, when we're in the 55th step, until we finish the 61st step, the inner truth step, that is at the end of that process, that we have to go through various things. We're going to go through the closing of doors. The 56th step, obviously, is the end of ideas and belief. Started long ago with the 11th step. And finally, you get to the 56th step, and you can finally close the door on that. When you get to the 57, you get to the completion of the individual integration process. In other words, you get to the completion of what has come before, the 10, the 20, the 34, slowly building up until the 57s there. In other words, that's really a time when you're going to see the emergence of really well-defined, differentiated, unique beings. Because that's a closing of the door. Here is the final formula. When you get to the 58, you get to the smell of judgment. Oh, yes. I'm a fan of all the religions in the sense that all of them come out of human design, so they're fun to look at and see, and all the terminology and the language and particularly the way various cultures see the end. Because this morning I'll give you the end before lunch, okay? So if you get to the 59, you get to the closing of the whole business of intimacy. You get to the 60, you get to the final limitation and the final mutation. You get to the 61, you get to the inner truth. You finish with the 62, you finish with just the facts, ma'am. You finish with the whole thing laid out, all the details, game is over, all the things are in, all the points are in, bang, over. Okay. Just to make that clear. This is the most interesting part of the round for me. It's the door closing. It's my last visit to Wien. As much as I've loved this place for 10 years, I love closing doors. Oh, I love closing. They're as much fun as opening doors. I love closing. Okay, here's the closing. Right. This is going to be the cycle that closes the round. We never get to this. That would be the place to go if it was going to continue in that sense. We never get to that point. What we get to is, we get to the very, very, very beginning of the very, very, very first line theme of all of this. And that's the moment when it comes to an end. And if you look at that, you can really, you can smell it. It's going to be Judgment Day. It's 5818 time, let's judge the whole movie. It is really going to be there. And the 49, which is the key, and of course the 49 is the great butcher. And in the way in which our spirituality is developed through our relationship to animals, through the 1949, that butcher, that 49th gate, represents most of the ideas that not self-humanity has about God. Yahweh said, I will punish you to the 10th generation. Heavy trip, eh? Wow. Anyway, okay, let's have a cosmic fairy tale. Crystals of consciousness. Crystals of consciousness bundle, that's their natural tendency. Personality crystals of consciousness, and there are many, 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 many bundles of personality crystal consciousness, envelop what we call the atmosphere around our planet. The vast majority of crystals of consciousness never, ever get to incarnate. And when I say the vast majority, I'm just not talking about the vast majority in relationship to the number of crystals endowed in humans. If you take all the crystals of consciousness that are alive on the planet now, and believe me, that is, or not believe me, the fact of that is, if you think about every single cell of every living thing that's on this planet, you can imagine that there is an absolutely extraordinary amount of crystals of consciousness that are here, yet they represent only a fraction, a tiny, tiny fraction of the number of crystals of consciousness that are part of the environment of our planet. It's one of the things to understand about the incarnative process, that we really are a class of crystals. In other words, that it is our exclusive responsibility to come into form, to come into these forms, into this experimental environment over and over again. And when you die, those of you that know about the information I've given out in death courses or I've been there, know that when the physical body comes to an end, the design crystal, its magnetic monopole go down into the design crystal bundle within the earth, but the personality crystal is picked up, literally picked up. That's why the body isn't to be disturbed for 72 hours. It has to wait for its pickup. That the personality crystal is picked up by its bundle, and it goes back and in essence informs the bundle, only informs it in the sense that within the bundle and within the aura of the inanimate nature of that bundle, it's all being infused by a neutrino information program so that there is a blending of information. When you take a personality crystal bundle, the chances are that there are very, very few crystals within that bundle, and the bundle may have tens of billions of crystals. Very few of those crystals that actually will incarnate into human beings, and they are regularly involved in bringing their information back. That's the way it works. Okay, so you have personality crystals on the outside. Within the nature, within the mantle of the earth, that is, we have a single unit for design crystals. There is a single bundle. According to the mythology that was given me on my first night of my experience with the voice, that the bundling of the crystals of consciousness is something that's been going on for the beginning. Those of you that have taken the Band 2 great course with me have seen my illustrations and descriptions of how the original crystal bundle was formed after the Big Bang event, when the Yang banged into the Yin and you have the shattering of the design and personality crystals, how they moved through space. One of the things to recognize is that the movement of the crystals of consciousness, they have moved, and they've moved a lot over 15 billion years. And I'm not just speaking of the natural movement that takes place, that we happen to be on a planet that relative to the center of our galaxy, we're traveling at around 480,000 miles an hour in space. In other words, everything is moving, we know that. But within the context of that real movement, I know that the crystals of consciousness at one time or another were associated with a star we call Arcturus. I know that at one time or another the crystals of consciousness were related to a star that we call Dubhe. I know very clearly that the crystals of consciousness, when they first came into what we called our solar system, did not come here to Earth. So one of the things about the nature of the mythology is that, according to what I was told, is that the physical destruction of the earth is not the point. That is, the mechanism of that physical destruction. Chances are that, the planet will suffer almost the identical fate of dinosaurs, except a little more powerful. We're constantly being bombarded by material from space. We have enormous concerns. We've got an asteroid that's going to pass within the distance of the Earth to the moon, and it's going to come by us around 2025, and they're speculating that, this is something, if it hit, it would be this or that or whatever. What I was told is that's the way that it will end. In other words, it will end the way in which all life works in the universe. All life works through the meeting of objects. It is this banging into each other that makes things happen. Now, I was given a mythology. And I was given a mythology with mechanical guise, after all. The mythology that I was given is that, yes, there is an end. The date is there. Yes, there's an end. At that moment, the whole process is going to come to an end. Now, what physically happens, at least within the context of this fairy tale, what physically happens is that the crystals of consciousness bundle. They bundle. Now, crystals that are outside of the body, are not manifesting consciousness. Please understand that. They are inert in that sense. They can be filters, but they're not self-reflected filters. In other words, you can have contact with Aunt Judy, whose personality crystal's in a neutrino alignment with you, and you suddenly have a sense of Aunt Judy in your head. You might recognize that self-reflectedly, but the crystal, the personality crystal of Aunt Judy won't know that's going on. In other words, it doesn't have any framework to operate out of, so no assumption about these aspects having any kind of self-reflective awareness. One of the things to recognize, though, is that the way in which development operates for us, and this is a very important development, and we are going to go into a night of Brahma. That is, it's going to take approximately 100 million years, from the point at which the planet comes to an end to the point in which the crystals of consciousness reformate in another guise, which I will show you this afternoon. I mentioned yesterday for a moment that the scientists have recently discovered two black holes that are moving closer and closer to each other, and they're going to bang into each other within approximately 100 million years from now. And when they bang into each other, they're going to rent the fabric of the universe. Doesn't mean they're going to destroy it. They're going to create some kind of ripple in it. Now, you see, the cosmic mythology that I was given is that the totality, what I call the biverse, is an unborn child. Now, child obviously is in huge quotation marks. It's an unborn entity. It's an unborn thing. I don't know what to call it. Child is kind of cute. I mean, that's what I was told, so I use it. It wouldn't have been my choice. So this unborn entity. The thing to recognize about it is, as far as I've been told, that this unborn entity right now is only endowed with a design crystal format. In other words, like a fetus in a womb, that the fetus spends most of its time in the womb simply being controlled in that sense, directed in that sense by the design crystal. We all know that the personality crystal comes in later. Now, what I was told was that at this point, approximately 100 million years from now, at that point, after the Earth has been destroyed and you've got the bundling of the crystals of consciousness, that at that point, that's when the personality crystal of the whole is going to enter. Now, the whole thing about the personality crystal of the whole, in other words, to give the unborn entity its identity. And the same thing that happens to the fetus in the human womb, in the sense that the personality crystal comes into the vehicle and the vehicle suddenly is more than a piece of meat. The vehicle has an identity. It has a passenger. It has consciousness that's only job is to reflect. So the totality as a whole is going to be penetrated by a personality crystal. The only name I can give it, let's call it cosmic personality crystal. It's going to come in from the outside, but something has to happen. What has to happen is it has to shatter. That's why the discovery of these two black holes was so interesting to me, and the time frame of all of that. Because you see, the moment that you create a renting in the fabric of the universe, you create opportunities for whatever that would take to shatter a personality crystal. One of the things to understand about the forms that are going to come and the way they're going to be endowed with consciousness is that they're all going to be endowed with a unified personality. We don't know that. That's what we call God. That's what we're looking for. The uniform personality, the whole, the one, the usness, the itness, whatever. But of course, it's not our design. It's not. Okay. Now, every time we go through such changes, this will be the fourth one that we will go through. Every time we go through such changes, a culling takes place. A culling. Now, culling is a word used euphemistically for killing. And for example, if you have a forest that's a fenced forest and you're a deer or fecund and you end up with too many deer, you're going to cull a few. And that means you're going to kill a few of them in order to make it more viable for the rest that are going to stay. We have culling that takes place in our own developmental process within the womb as a fetus. The prehensile tail, gets culled. The gill-like capacity gets culled. In other words, certain attributes that are valuable at a certain moment in our development, when they're no longer of value, we easily are rid of them. Okay. Wherever you look in the mythologies of religions, you find these tales of what happens after. And so many of these involve both positive and negative environments and so forth and so on. The Western tradition of heaven and hell, these kinds of concepts. Something happened to the unborn entity. And what happened to it was that its gender became defined. And the moment that its gender became defined, there was a long road to eliminating the genetic aspects that would pull it away from its gender direction. Now, it sounds rather esoteric. Think about it this way. Think about it in the context of the I Ching. You have the yang-yang father, you have the yin-yin mother. And they produce a yang-yin or a yin-yang variation of each other, in which there is a combination. I know that the baby is a girl. And when I say that, I'm trying to be cute, but I know it's not yang. I know it has aspects of yang, but it's not yang. We're coming to a point of the final culling. And the final culling is the culling of the yang-yang. Now, there have been other cullings. The last one, those that were culled, that is crystals of consciousness that were culled, they're what we breathe and take in every moment of our lives. They sit at the heart of the sun, slowly incinerating. They provide enormous information and energy. And they're running out, so to speak. The fires need to be stoked again. You know, out of stuff like that, you could make up wonderful mythologies, no? So when we get to this point that there's going to be this big whacking, and the crystals of consciousness are going to bundle, in that whacking, all of the yang-yang crystals, all of them, literally, will be fed into the sun. Literally fed into the sun. Not all crystals of consciousness make it to the end. I mean, whether it's true or not, I do not know. I was told that I am the archetype of yang-yang and that my crystals will be destroyed, and they'll be destroyed the moment I end this life. Now, it'll take a long time for them to disappear. They're like, well, if you can imagine the energy that's available in an atom, because we already know that, to imagine the energy that is inside such a thing and how tiny it is. I mean, neutrinos are incredibly tiny. A crystal of consciousness is about 5 neutrinos wide. It's not like it's big. There's no morality attached to that whatsoever. I mean, it's not about whether you've been good or bad. You know, many of the yang-yang forces that are here in the world are forces that, within the general context of understanding, would be considered to be positive forces in the world. It's not that you're yang-yang and you're automatically evil or bad or whatever. But you see, the yang-yang carries with it a penetrating force that no longer is necessary. It carries an initiating force that no longer will be necessary. You know, like those aspects in the developing fetus that are simply eliminated because they no longer serve a proper function, the same thing is true at the level of crystals of consciousness. You know, the yang-yang in the end will represent somewhere around 22% of consciousness crystals that have been incarnating and have been in circulation for somewhere around 14 billion years. And they will end. There will be less crystals of consciousness that will be available. And one of the byproducts of that is that we will no longer be incarnating as an ongoing process. In other words, we will only have to incarnate once. And that, as you will see, is a very different kind of movie. So there will not be a need for cycles and replenishment and so forth and so on. You're simply going to have a reduction in the numbers, but basically what you have is a defining of the gender of the whole. And by the way, when I say it's going to be a girl or that it's going to be more yin than yang, I honestly don't know what that means. Honestly, I have no idea what that means. I have no way of seeing the whole from the outside. You know, it's a ring past knot that none of us have access to. You just don't. There's no way. There's no way of knowing, you know, as a gene, and a very smart little gene within an enormous vehicle, you know, what the life of that vehicle is, what it looks like, who made that, all of those things, they're far beyond us to grasp. What's clear to me is that we're entering into a final stage in our development. That is basically we're reaching a point now as we move to the end of this in which we finally have the capacity to be interactive with the whole. And again, that's our direction. Now, Raves are going to be much more successful at this because they're going to operate with an awareness that has a very dense field, and that they'll be able to use that dense field. But it's so important, my description to you about the neutrino field moving through us and moving out into space in every direction, to really understand that that is an information base flowing outwards. It's not personalized or identified. It's not like that. But it is information consciousness going out. All of it sourced through the crystals of consciousness that are experiencing this here. This is part of our whole process, so that by the time we get to the closing of that door, when we finally get to the point where this experimentation in vast diversification and in unique identification with separate forms comes to an end, we're finally ready to do our job guided by a single personality. We don't know what that's like. Imagine what it would be like. Every single one of us have different designs, but we all have exactly the same personality. Think about that. Isn't that something different? How does that work? And as I'll show you, it's going to be even more complex than that. You're going to have everybody having two designs, two design crystals, all sharing the same personality, but all sharing the same personality. That means that the influences of the neutrino impact as a programming agent, that programming agent is going to operate exactly the same way, with all of those unique aspects. Exactly. It also tells you something else, that you're going to see, funny way to phrase that. What's going to happen is that we're going to have the only mass incarnation in our whole process. Because in order to achieve that, everybody, all those crystals of consciousness, have to come into form at exactly the same time. All of them, exactly the same time. Think of what that would be like. All of us had exactly the same birthday. Because that's what it means. Think about it. Yeah. Anyway, that's why we don't know the whole. Do you understand? We can't know the whole because we're not the whole. We're all differentiated aspects. But the moment we go into that transition in which we're all unified through a single personality, we are the whole. Everybody at the personality level is operating in exactly the same way. That's why we can't do that now. And the yang, and I know, because I'm never going to ride in one of those boxes. The yang would never have anything to do with that. Ever. No way. Which is why we don't get there. No way. I don't want anybody in this passenger seat. Get out of my car. I don't want anybody in there. This is my place. It's been my whole trip for millions of years to identify the itness of me. This personality crystal is ancient, like yours, from the beginning. For it finally to just be itself alone in the box. Ah, that's nice. Everybody's sitting beside me saying, did you see that? Yeah? No. I don't want to see the same thing you see. I don't want to smell the same thing you smell. don't. I don't. Because I don't. Because I don't. That's the magic of being unique. Right? It's all your own. It's all your own. This is our triumph. Oh yeah, we'll get there. They'll give us a different box. When you have a different box, it'll all be different. But here in these, the doors are sealed. I got children locks on my doors. You can't get in there. Can't. No way. Wonderful.